And I think a big one has been and of course this is all facilitated by the internet, but it's not only a product of the internet, and that is the fixation on Gramscian wars of cultural position, standing in for material politics. And I know a lot of people do that not out of malice, but because that is what can be fought. Like, what do you do about material conditions? How do you engage that realistically in a depoliticized country with basically zero class consciousness and no unified working class to speak of, either geographically, ethnically, anything? So, of course, the cultural firmament becomes the only place to play. And I feel like one of the big misunderstandings of these critiques of like the new of critiques of the critical theory tradition, from the Frankfurt School to the postmodernists and all that. And there is a current of blaming them for that cultural turn on the left. And I don't really think that's the case. I think that the cultural turn on the left was inevitable as soon as the material war ended. Especially after that wall fell, what was left but the cultural terrain? So that's, I think, the main contributor. Once again, the material driver of the cultural turn, not because people were reading stuff, but I think the reason that those thinkers get so it became totemic and their concepts became used to build this Tower of Babel about culture is because they were describing how culture operates in capitalism. Like that was the project. This is how capitalism, especially like 20th century techno-capitalism, this is how it operates as a governing ideology in culture. That's what they were tracing. And over time, especially after that pesky material collapse of the left, that over time turned into in people's minds, I think even not even consciously, that went from a description of this is what culture is under capitalism to a normative argument that like this is what society is always. That this is not contingent, and more importantly, that it's not just culture. That it's not the way that that material relations form a culture. It's the way that culture takes over and becomes the entire terrain. And that's where the errors came in, I think. And that's where the snake swallowed its own tail. But that doesn't mean that the insights are inherently wrong. It's just that you're talking about the shadow. You know, you're talking about the shadows on the wall, and describing the shadows on the wall accurately. That has use, but it should not be mistaken for the totality of reality, which is how it has become thought of, which is what allowed people to turn all this analysis on its head and say, oh, you know, the way that material culture creates all these racial and gender oppressions and stuff. Well, if we stop those, that'll end up filtering down into the material reality somehow, when in reality that's not what happens. But then you get people, but that leads to confusion on both sides, because anytime I see anybody yelling about feminism and they make a point that I think is totally accurate. They say, look at what modern feminism, as it has been culturally metabolized, tells women about what their life should be. It should be a pursuit of career, that is, and everything else should be subsidiary to that. Career, family first, or career first, then family, and everything else. And that's how you actualize. If you do it the wrong way, you will find yourself at some point thwarted. And they'll say, but everyone's miserable. All these women who do that, all these women who pursue their careers are miserable. So what the fuck? And that's a very good point. I mean, it's a observation of reality anyway. But then they blame feminism for it. The idea being that, the feminism convinced all these women that they needed to go get a job. No, the American economy stopped being able to support one income households. That's what happened. You used to be able to raise a family. In fact, for most of human history, you could raise a family on one income. And for the first time in human history, anywhere really, that was no longer possible. And then feminism becomes, of course, feminism emerging from that gives you the cope. Like that's what culture does. It metabolizes the specific alienation and trauma that the material order creates, and then it creates a mirror cultural version that is designed. I mean, not designed, but emerges sort of like as a immune system for capitalism to transform that alienation into some carrot on the end of a stick that you can go off. It's like, yeah, this sucks, but have you considered this? And that's what feminism is. It's like, yeah, this sucks, but if it wasn't for that sexism, that job would be better. It's not that work is alienating. It's not that no one should try to raise a family with both people working. That's not ideal, and it's not necessary. I mean, it's inherently corrosive to the structure of a family. It is. It just is. It's pressure. Pressure makes human interactions difficult of all kinds, and that's why it should be relieved. But instead of focusing on the fact that the one income household is impossible now for most people, people want to argue about whether it's feminism's fault that women are miserable in jobs and delaying marriage and delaying kids, or having kids and then not being able to make it work, or anything like that. If feminism loses tomorrow, if the red pill takes over, then people still aren't going to be able to fucking live as a family with one income, and women are going to have to be in the fucking workplace. And all of the horrible shit that they talk about the destabilized home life of late capitalist America is recreated. And you could argue, well, yes, but if we got rid of the feminism, then you could get people on board with some sort of redistributed program that would have like a family-friendly policy. Well, if you haven't gotten rid of capitalism, then, and in the moment we live in, which is a terminal crisis of capitalism and a crisis of profitability that is irreversible, there is no room at the inn for any kind of radical redistribution. So any politics that incorporates like the conventional order is not going to be able to make any demands other than superficial ones. And then what do you end up having is, divorce was banned or some shit, and it won't have any real effect, or it'll sublimate all the fucking alienation that you claim to have been curing. But and the other thing is okay, you've made your appeal to these people who don't like feminism, and now you've got them on board. What's this? You lost the people who do think that women should have, that there should be like a role for women in the workplace, and that you shouldn't have to stay to have two jobs, but if a woman wants to work, they should. Hell, men should be able to stay home, and that if women are in the workplace, they sure as hell deserve to not have to face sexism in the workplace. And that's a totally reasonable argument too. And they could point to the misery of the pre-liberated housewife, which was significant. And they're right too. And you're not going to convince them otherwise is the important thing. And so, you got them and now you've lost them. And that means you have a new political configuration. You have a new constituency, and once again, it's too little. It's too small. It's like the fucking Aesop's fable where the fox has the grape in his mouth, and he walks by the water, and he sees it, and he tries to get it, and he opens his mouth and drops it in the water, and he loses both of them. That's what will happen. Either one of those. Like, we need to set serious about like setting the terms for the left of it being like radically hostile to religion and the family. Okay, great. This is America. What do you think you're doing? You are guaranteeing minority status. But if you say on the other side, no, we need like an aggressively trad socialism, well, then you've lost the other. The only way to overcome that is to fucking recognize that feminism isn't the problem one way or the other. And that if you want to be a woman who works in the workplace, or if you want to be a woman and stay home, you should be able to do either. because people should be able to live without it being tied to a fucking compelled exploitation of their fucking labor. Because both are true. The idea of all women should have a job is insane. The idea that all women should stay home is also insane. But we went from tacitly endorsing one, although it was never true for working class women. Working class women always worked. To mandating it through the market, so the coercion is invisible. We don't see the coercion, so we just say, it's feminism that made all those women go to work and get miserable.